It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I found my daughter sitting by the window, her little legs swinging back and forth. The sunlight poured over her desk where crayons, papers, and an open envelope lay scattered. She was completely absorbed, her tongue peeking out slightly as she wrote each word with great care. "What you writing, sweetheart?" I asked, leaning on the doorframe. She didn't look up, just said a letter, but it's not for school. "Oh, yeah, who's it for?" She hesitated for a moment, then turned to warn me, holding up the paper with both hands. "It's for God." I smiled, but something in her expression made me pause. Her eyes were serious, too serious for a 6-year-old. "For God, that's a special letter," I said, sitting down beside her. "What are you telling him?" She looked down at the page again. "I'm asking him to take care of Grandma. I know she's already with him, but maybe he forgot to give her her blanket." My throat tightened. It had been 3 months since my mother passed away. We told her that Grandma went to heaven, that she was safe now. But to her, heaven wasn't just a place of peace. It was a place where someone could still feel cold without their blanket. She kept talking. I drew her to look. The drawing was full of colors. A sky with stars. A little old lady wrapped in a purple blanket, and a big smiling cloud in the corner. She had drawn herself, waving. "Do you think he'll get it?" she asked softly. I didn't know what to say. "Well," I said, "God doesn't really have an address, does he?" She frowned. "And how does he get letters?" I smiled. "Maybe if we send it the right way, he'll find it." That night after she went to sleep, I thought about that letter. It was such an innocent thing. Child's way of reaching for something bigger than herself, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. The next morning, I found it on the kitchen table in big uneven letters. It said, "To God, heaven from Lily." No stamp, no address, just hope. At breakfast, she handed it to me. "Can we send it today, Daddy?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect her from disappointment. But when I looked at her face, I saw pure faith shining in her eyes, and I couldn't say no. "All right," I said, "let's send it." That afternoon, we walked together to the red mailbox. Down the street, the autumn air was crisp and leaves danced around our feet. She stood on tiptoes and dropped the letter inside. There she said proudly, "Now God will know Grandma needs her blanket." I smiled and nodded, but part of me ached as we walked home. I looked back once at that quiet red mailbox holding one small letter addressed to heaven. I had no idea that in just a few days someone would knock on our door. 3 days passed, and the letter was forgotten. Or at least, that's what I thought. Life went on with its usual rhythm. Breakfast messes, school drop-offs, bedtime stories. But every night before sleeping, Lily would look up at the ceiling and whisper, "Do you think he got it yet?" I'd smile softly, tuck her in, and say, "I think he's reading it right now on the 4th. Morning it happened. There was a knock at the door. 3 soft knocks. I wasn't expecting anyone, no deliveries, no visitors. It was early, just after sunrise. The air outside was thick with mist. I opened the door, and there stood a man in a postal uniform. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with kind eyes and a weathered face. His hands looked rough, the kind that had held a lifetime of letters. He held something in his hand. Small, worn envelope. "Good morning," he said, adjusting his cap. "Are you Mr. Davis?" "Yes," I replied, slightly confused. He nodded and looked down at the envelope. "I believe this belongs to your daughter." I froze. My eyes went straight to the paper in his hand. It was Lily's letter, creased, smudged, but unmistakably hers. The same uneven handwriting, the same purple crayon hearts. "To God, heaven, how did you?" I started. He smiled faintly. "Well, this came through our sorting center. No address, of course. So it got flagged. Normally letters like this end up in the dead mail office." But he paused, his eyes softening. Something about it made me stop. I read. "It you read it?" I asked, not angry, just surprised. He nodded, almost ashamed. I don't usually open mail, sir, but I saw the handwriting, a child's handwriting, and the words, they touched me. My wife passed away last winter. He took a deep breath, and your little girl wrote about blankets and stars and how heaven must be warm. It broke something open in me. I didn't know what to say. He continued. I didn't want it to just disappear, so I wrote back. My heart skipped you. What he handed me the envelope. It was sealed, and on the front, written in neat adult handwriting, were the words to Lily from heaven. I stared at it, stunned. He smiled gently. You don't have to tell her who it's really from. Maybe let her believe. Just for a little while. Kids don't get to keep their magic for long. And with that, he tipped his hat and walked away, disappearing into the soft morning fog. I stood there for a long time, holding the envelope in both hands. It felt warm, somehow like it carried something more than paper inside. When I turned around, Lily was standing in the hallway, clutching her teddy bear, her eyes wide. Daddy, she whispered, is that from God? I looked at her, my throat tightened. Nodded, yes, sweetheart, I think it is. Lily took the envelope with both hands, like it was made of glass. Her eyes sparkled with something I hadn't seen since before Grandma passed away, that pure, innocent wonder that only children can hold. She turned it over, tracing the words with her small fingers. From heaven, she whispered, her voice trembling. He really wrote back. We sat together on the living room floor, the morning light spreading across the carpet. She looked up at me. Can I open it? No, I nodded. Go ahead. She carefully tore open the top, slow and gentle like she was unwrapping a miracle. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. She unfolded it and began to read aloud. Dear Lily, thank you for your beautiful letter. I made sure your grandma got her blanket. She smiled and said it was her favorite one, the purple one with stars. She wants you to know she's warm now. She sits by the brightest window in heaven where the light never fades. She still watches you draw and laugh and sing. She asked me to tell you that she's proud of how brave you are. Keep being kind. Keep helping Daddy. And when you look at the sky at night and see the biggest, brightest star, that's her. She's waving back with love. God, her voice cracked. At the end, she pressed the letter to her chest, her eyes shining with tears. Not sadness, but something softer. Hoop! Felt a lump rise in my throat. Whoever that old postman was, he had written something far more powerful than he could ever imagine. He had given my daughter peace. She said quietly. He really read it? Yeah, baby, I whispered. He really did. She jumped up suddenly and ran to her room. A moment later, she came back, holding her box of crayons. She sat down and began drawing on a new piece of paper. What are you making now? I asked. A thank you letter, she said without looking up. If you can get letters, then I can say thank you, right? I smiled. Of course. She spent the next hour drawing clouds and angels coloring stars, writing in big, uneven letters. Every few minutes she'd pause and ask, do you think Grandma liked her blanket? Or do you think God has enough room for everyone? And every time I said yes, because in that moment it was true, at least for her, and maybe for me. To when she finished, she sealed the new letter and held it close. Can we send this one today too? She asked. Hesitated. I didn't know if the same miracle could happen twice, but when I looked at her, I saw that same light, that same faith, the kind adults forget, but children are born with. Yeah, I said softly. Let's send it. She grinned and hugged me tight. Okay, I'll draw extra stars this time so he can find it faster. And as she skipped off to grab her coat, I looked at the letter, still lying on the table, the one that said from heaven. For a moment, I let myself believe it too. That afternoon, we walked together again, hand in, hand down the same quiet street toward the red mailbox. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in soft shades of gold, and Pink Lily hummed a little tune as she skipped beside me, holding her new letter tight against her chest. When we reached the mailbox, she looked up at it with that bright smile that could melt the coldest heart. "Ready, Daddy, ready," I said. She stood on her tiptoes again and dropped the envelope inside it. Made a small clink as it disappeared. She waved at the box. "Bye, Dad. Get lost." "Okay." I laughed quietly. I think he knows the way now. As we walked back, she talked about all the things she wanted to tell Grandma next time, about her new school project, about the puppy she hoped we'd get someday, about how she wanted to draw a map of heaven so other people could send letters to her. Innocence was like sunlight, warm and pure, and though I didn't say it out loud, a part of me prayed she would never lose that faith. That night, after tucking her into bed, I sat by the window looking out at the stars. The world outside was still, but inside my heart something had changed. That simple act, a letter, a stranger's kindness, a child's belief, it had reminded me of something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. 2 days later, there was another knock at the door. When I opened it, no one was there. Only a small package sat on the porch, wrapped in brown paper. No name, no address, just a little drawing of a star in the corner. Inside, I found a purple blanket folded neatly, soft and familiar, and on top of it a note for Lily, so she never forgets that love always finds its way home. I felt tears blur my eyes as I ran my fingers over the fabric. It was the same as my mother's, the same purple blanket she used every winter. When I showed it to Lily, her face lit up. "See, Daddy, I told you God listens." She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, smiling wide. "Now I've got one to just like Grandma." And that night, before closing her eyes, she whispered, "Thank you, God, for listening." I stood in the doorway, watching her drift into sleep, her little hands clutching the blanket, a faint smile on her face. Maybe it was just a kind stranger. Maybe it was coincidence. Or maybe it was something more, because sometimes faith doesn't come as thunder or miracles in the sky. Sometimes it comes as a letter written in crayon, sent with love and answered in silence. As I looked up at the stars, one of them seemed to shine brighter than the rest. Maybe Grandma was waving back. If you have faith in God, comment a mem.